Hey everybody. Today we're going to go over some multi-step equations, some tough ones. Okay. So to go through one problem at a time. At this point, I have already gone over some of the more basics of equations, and so if you haven't watched those videos yet, I would definitely recommend that before you watch these, because these are going to be longer and want to go a little bit faster. And so yeah, make sure you understand the basics before you get into the tough stuff here. Okay. All right, so four problems, just going to do one at a time. Okay, so number one, 8 plus 3x equals 4x minus 3 times the group x minus 4. Okay, so a lot going on. And what I noticed first is that we can distribute, right? Before you cancel anything, it's a good idea to simplify what's on either side to try to get it to be as few terms as possible on each side. Okay, so I'm going to distribute this. Okay, and I've mentioned before that negative and minus in algebra problems kind of can represent the same thing. And so we do think of this as a negative 3. Okay, and so I'm going to multiply. That's going to be my first step, is just on this right side, change this. So it's going to be 4x minus, and it's going to be negative 3 times x. So negative 3 times x, just lump them together, negative 3x. Okay, and then negative 3 times, again, you think of this as negative 4 as well. So negative 3 times negative 4, positive 12. Okay, so I distributed on that right side. So that's step one. And again, whatever didn't change, you just bring down exactly how it was. Okay, so 8 plus 3x equals 4x minus 3x plus 12. Okay, next step. Again, before you cancel anything, can you simplify anything on either side? Okay, and I can. You see, I have, these are called like terms. Again, like terms have the same variable with the same exponents, and these are like terms, which means I can combine them. Okay, and a common thing kids try to do is they mix up some of their rules. What they'll try and do is plus 3x, and they'll kind of add it twice to the same side, thinking, oh, I have to cancel this to combine it. That is so common. That's maybe one of the most common algebra mistakes I see. And this isn't right. Okay, I know that's what you might think. To combine x terms, I have to cancel. But we actually don't do that here because they're already on the same side, right? The equal sign barrier isn't dividing them, right? To be able to combine this 3x with one of these, I would have to cancel it because this equal sign is between them. But these two don't have that. So I can just do straight up what it says. 4x minus 3x would give me 1x. Okay. You don't have to write the 1, but I'm going to here. Okay. So 4x minus 3x gives me 1x. And then that plus 12 comes down. And this 8 plus 3x. Now I look at each side individually. And I've simplified everything that I can on the individual sides. Okay. Which means at that point, once you do that, now you start to cancel. Okay, and again, in my previous videos, I mentioned you try to cancel out a variable term first. That's oftentimes the easiest thing to do, and that'll get it to a point where you'll know what to do, hopefully. Okay, and I mentioned too, if you have the choice, cancel the one on the right side because that'll make it look more familiar. Okay, so this is positive 1x. So to cancel that, I'm going to do minus 1x because 1x minus 1x is 0x, and that'll cancel. Okay. But again, when I cancel something, I have to do it once to each side of the equal sign. Okay, one on each side of the equal sign. Again, that's all about that visual of it's a scale. There's some on this side, some on this side. So if you take something from one side to keep it in balance, you have to take from the other side too. Okay, so I combine those and I get 8. And then right here, 3x minus 1x is positive 2x. I'm going to write that it's positive. I'm going to write that plus there to show that. And then this canceled, so on this right side I just have 12. Okay? So again, the whole goal of all these is to get the x by itself so that we can find what that unknown value is. Okay, and I'm almost there. I have a single x here now, so that's what I'm going to try to get by itself, that single x. Okay, but I have a few more things to cancel, right? So this positive 8, I can subtract that from both sides to cancel that. And so I do that, I'm left with 12 minus 8, and that is 4, okay? And so on this left side, I have 2x. 2x equals 4. and then I divide both sides by 2 as my last step, because that's canceling out this multiplication. So I'm left with x equals 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Okay, so lots of steps in there, but again, just do one thing at a time. It's so much about that process, okay? Because I know things like photo math can tell you the answer, but in my classroom, I know I value so much more. Do you get the process so much more than can you just tell me what x is equal to, okay? So try to grasp what this process is, okay? Make that your big goal. Okay, now number 2 is a little different, okay? Not as many terms, okay? But you see it's got this big fraction. So what this is 3x minus 5 all divided by 7, okay? Again, normally the first thing I would maybe try and do is plus 5 to cancel out this minus 5. And normally that would be a good thing to do first. But the only thing is, this isn't just minus 5. This is part of this fraction. This is a term that's being divided by the 7, okay? So really, this is kind of part of this group that's up top. And so I'm not able to add that 5 because it's part of this group and part of this big fraction. Okay, so what I want to figure out is, okay, if I can't add the 5, and the same thing would go for dividing by the 3. I couldn't do that because it's also being divided by the 7. It's part of that group. So what I want to figure out is, okay, how could I cancel the fraction part out? How could I cancel out the denominator so that it is no longer a fraction and I can start to cancel these? Well, you think about a fraction. Fraction means dividing, right? It's division. And so opposite of division is multiplication, right? So I'm going to multiply both sides by this 7 that's on the bottom, okay? Because right now this is saying all of this divided by 7. So if I multiply by 7, that'll cancel. And that's awesome, okay? And then here, again, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I also times this side by 7. So when you see a big fraction like this, just on one side, the way to go is to cancel out the denominator. What I'm left with then is 3x minus 5 equals negative 8 times 7 is negative 56. Okay, so there's step 1. And now look at this. This is an equation that hopefully, this is a 2-step equation now, that with a single x, that hopefully you know what to do. You know the pattern and know how to solve, right? So I cancel out the number without the x on this side first, plus 5 to both sides, and I get 3x equals negative 56 plus 5, takes me to negative 51, okay? And then last step is divide by the 3, because that is multiplied by the x. So 3 times x cancels with divided by 3, and then my answer is going to be x equals negative 51 divided by 3. I'm going to use a calculator because that's one you might not know off the top of your head, but it's negative 17 is the answer, okay? So x equals negative 17. Moving on to number 3. Get a new color here. Number 3, 9x minus 22 minus x equals 7 plus 4x minus 9. Holy cow, a lot going on there, right? But again, one thing at a time, okay? With a really big problem like this, the first thing I usually look for is, are there any distributions that I need to do? Because that's a good thing to do first. But there's not. There's no distributions. You don't see any parentheses and no numbers outside of them, so no distribution. So my next step then would be to say, okay, can I combine anything on each individual side? Are there any like terms on this side? And then separately, are there any like terms on this side? So I'm not going to cancel anything out yet. I'm just going to combine like terms. And I do have some. I do have some like terms. 9x and this minus 1x or negative 1x, okay? I'm going to put the 1 there because they don't often write that, but it's just helpful to remember that it's 1. So 9x minus 1x, okay? And so remember, I don't have to cancel. I don't have to plus 1x from both to both of these or whatever. I can just combine them straight up and do 9x minus 1x gives me 8x. So 8x minus 22, and it would be positive 8 because it's 9 minus 1 is positive 8, okay? So you could write negative 22 plus 8x, same thing, but I'll write it like this, okay? And then separately on this right side, are there any like terms here? Again, not to cancel yet, but just to combine them, okay? And I do, there's only one x term, but there's 2 constants. There's 2 numbers without x's. And so I'm gonna add those as well, or subtract. 7 minus 9. So 7 in this, so you include, and this can be tricky. you include the sign that's just in front of the term. Okay, so you might think, why wouldn't you do 7 plus 9? Because the 7, but the plus is going with the 4x. Okay, the sign right before the term tells you whether it's positive or negative in how you combine those. So this is saying 7 minus 9. Okay, kind of ignore that positive 4x in the middle. So 7 minus 9 would be negative 2. And then you bring down the positive 4x. Okay, so just look at the signs just before the term to tell you whether it's positive or negative, and that also tells you whether you're adding or subtracting when you combine them. Okay, now I combined everything. Now it is time to start to cancel or use inverse operations. Okay, so again, cancel out the variable term on the right first. That's a good thing to do. Minus 4x, minus 4x. I do that and I get 8x minus 4x is 4x minus 22 equals negative 2. And this canceled. And now I just have the single x. And again, hopefully at this point you look at that and you're like, yes, I'm confident. I know what to do from here. I can take it from here. So yeah, you plus 22 to cancel out this minus 22, and you get 4x equals negative 2 plus 22 is 20. And then you divide by the 4 as your last step to get x equals 5. Okay, awesome. Last one. Don't be scared of fractions, okay? And I'm going to show you here. We can actually deal with this without thinking of it as a fraction, okay? So this is saying 5/4 x minus 6 equals 2x plus 4. Nothing to distribute, right? That would be step 1. And there's no like terms on either side, okay? So I don't have to worry about combining any like terms here. So it would be time to cancel something. And what I would cancel is that variable on the right, okay? But here's what's tricky. And I'm going to do that first, but I'm going to change something over here before I do that, okay? Because 5/4 minus 2 would be the actual math that's happening here. And that's confusing, right? 5/4 minus 2. Again, most people don't like to deal with fractions, and yeah, that's tricky, okay? So a lot of the time, what you can do to make life easier for you is change this. I'm going to erase this as well. 5/4, right? All fractions can also be written as decimals, okay? Sometimes they're repeating decimals, so you have to kind of round them. But 5/4 is easy. 5 divided by 4 would just be 1.25, okay? And then you can just rewrite the rest. So that's, anytime I see just like an individual fraction, okay, not like a big one like this, but an individual fraction like this, that's just a kind of a coefficient, I like to change it to a decimal. Oftentimes that makes it a lot easier to know what to do. And so now that I changed that, now I can start to cancel, and I am going to do minus 2x like I said. So now the math is 1.25 minus 2, okay, and you can use a calculator still for that, but what you end up getting is negative 0.75. And that's still a decimal, but it's okay. I think a lot of kids understand or have an easier time with decimals than fractions. So I like that right there. Okay, so negative 0.75x minus 6 equals just 4. And now again, it's a two-step equation. Even though this is a messy decimal, it's fine. You still handle it the same steps. That's still just a number that we're going to divide by. Okay, so I'm going to plus 6 from both sides and get negative 0.75x equals 10, okay? And then my last step is to divide both sides by negative 0.75. So you do that, and you end up getting a decimal as an answer still. It's x equals negative 13.33 repeating. I'd use my calculator for that one. Okay, so there you go. There's multi-step equations. Again, our big ones. But I hope that you see that just one step at a time, and you can handle it. Okay, so thanks.